Good evening. If you wish to speak tonight on any of the subjects or during public comment, please complete a request to speak form. They are available at the entry where you come in at this little table up there. And please, City Clerk, and you will be called upon at the appropriate time. I have to find the appropriate gavel. If I use the Planning Commission gavel, that means we don't formally have a city council meeting, right?
I think you'll be okay, Madam Mayor.
All right. Calling to order the city council meeting of the city of Grand Terrace, and the city council is a successor agency, and the city council is the housing successor agency for a meeting of March 14th. At this time, we will have an invocation given by Pastor Kevin Martis from Sandals Church, and immediately following that, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Captain Bolt of the San Bernardino County Sheriff. So if you would, please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Would you join me in a word of prayer, please? Father God, Lord, we thank you for each person in this room, whether they serve in some capacity on the council or have taken time, will have made the time, Lord, to be here. We ask that you would join this group today. Father, may the words that we use and the tone that we use them in be kind. May the decisions that we make be wise and be in the very best interest of the city. Lord, and may your love and may your compassion fill our hearts as we go about the business of the residents of our neighborhoods. It is in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Martis and Captain Bolt. And we will move on with our council meeting. Our first item is a special presentation. This is law enforcement's presentation on the impacts. I skipped right over roll call. I was very excited to get to our special presentation. Thank you very much for reminding me. Madam City Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Reiners.
Present.
Councilmember Hussey.
Present.
Councilmember Wilson. Absent. Mayor Pro Tem Robles.
Present.
Mayor McNabb.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, now, the moment you've all been waiting for. We will have our special presentation by Captain Bolt on law enforcement's presentation on the impacts to communities of legalized marijuana.
Thank you so much. I'm going to try not to push this microphone off the stand here. This wasn't designed for short people, so I apologize if I have to make a few adjustments. Good morning, or good evening, Mayor, Honorable Council, city staff, and members of this beautiful community. My name is Danielle Bolt, and I am a San Bernardino County Sheriff's Captain. I am blessed to serve as the Chief of Police in the city of Rancho Cucamonga. In 2016, prior to the ballot initiative appearing, the Prop 64 ballot initiative going to the voters, the city of Rancho Cucamonga sent myself and a small cadre of other city employees to the Colorado area so that we could sit down with our counterparts in 6 different municipalities and hear directly from them what the real-life impacts of Colorado's legalization of recreational marijuana felt like. And I had the blessing of sitting across the table from chiefs of police, lieutenants, etc., but I also got to enjoy the communication between our city's planning director, assistant to the city manager, etc. So I heard a variety of information. What I've done here is create a presentation that gives an overview of what we experienced and what we've learned by studying the effects of recreational marijuana In February, while we were in Denver, in the Denver area, we selected municipalities that were similar in population demographics to Rancho Cucamonga. We talked to them about their varying levels of regulation in applying marijuana, land use, municipal codes, and so on. And then since we have followed very closely the impacts through an organization called the Rocky Mountain HIDA, which is the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, that particular body was given the responsibility by the state of Colorado to very carefully monitor and track the impacts of recreational marijuana. Some of the statistics that I'm going to be quoting to you tonight come from that Rocky Mountain HIDA report, which is available online. If you just do a simple Google search of that name, you have access to their, I believe they create 2 or 3 reports a year. The other data that I'm going to show you tonight is from our own experiences as we visited these cities. Prop 64, of course, has now been passed by the voters overwhelmingly in the state of California. In essence, it legalizes the recreational possession, ingestion, sales, and cultivation of marijuana. It imposes state tax on retail sales, but it also allows for local regulation and taxation. We've all become familiar with medicinal marijuana being available to our communities through medically approved examinations and prescriptions, if you will. This is no longer the case. It's now also allowed for recreational purposes. The image that I have here depicts some of the products that we found when we visited the dispensaries in the greater Denver area. I picked this picture in particular because obviously these items resemble commonly known candy. Mm-hmm. They are designed to look like gummy bears or sugar-coated candies of varying sorts. Just a quick reference chart of Prop 64. Essentially what it does is it reduces the possession of recreational marijuana by juveniles to an infraction. It allows people over the age of 21 to possess, smoke, and ingest and cultivate. And then people between the ages of 21 and 18 are subject to infractions or misdemeanors if they're caught with certain possessions. Less than an ounce is an infraction. More than an ounce is a misdemeanor. You can still regulate your city properties. There are sections within Prop 64 that prohibit certain marijuana uses within 1,000 feet of school or on school grounds. As far as businesses are concerned, the local municipalities do still have the legal authority to write their own land use regulations that would, if you will, either ban, prohibit, or otherwise regulate commercial cultivation and sales. This was an interesting image that we saw, similar images like this throughout the greater Denver area. This used to be a Kentucky Fried Chicken business that was purchased by a marijuana dispensary, and they kept the play on the acronym KFC. It's actually a dispensary called Kind for Cures. So I would encourage your city, as well as the neighboring cities of this county, to consider, if you're going to allow dispensaries, that you develop very strict development and zoning ordinances in order to keep your business community in line with the desire of your citizens. We cannot ban personal use, only in certain areas such as school zones. Of course, it is not allowed while operating a motor vehicle. Ingestion now comes in many forms. I'm not sure the average age group of the audience watching us here tonight, so I'll use myself as a personal example. The marijuana that we grew up with, that I grew up with, that I saw being used by my peer group is not the marijuana of today. They have created a very highly potent plant. that I took at a dispensary, and it's called Keef Cola. This is just one of many examples of new ways to ingest marijuana. It's now vaped, eaten, drinking from sodas like this one. It's even applied through body lotions and tampons. Under Prop 64, we cannot ban personal indoor cultivation, but you, as a city, can regulate this cultivation. I strongly suggest that you take a look at that ability, because what we found in Colorado was an abundance of in-home personal cultivations that had a very negative impact on the neighbors who did not enjoy the odor. Even though in this image you can see the marijuana plants are completely contained in a homemade contraption, if you look on the far right of the screen, that is a vent. You have to vent these indoor greenhouses, if you will, and if you haven't smelled a blooming marijuana plant, once you do, you'll never forget the odor. It's very, very pungent. So when you have a residential area that is very dense, where there is not a lot of space or air circulation between one house or an apartment even, you're going to see an increase in complaints because there's no way to stop the odor of one cultivation inside a house from affecting the immediate community. We don't know yet how the district attorney's office will view violations on in-home cultivations that exceed what is allowed under Prop 64. In Colorado, they had great struggles with it because it wasn't very well written. And one example that I would like to share with you is if you are a medicinal marijuana care provider, you then could very well be allowed to grow more than 6 plants of marijuana in your home. So conditions exist today, even under Prop 64, that could allow way more, far more than 6 plants being grown inside of a home. And there's the vent that I'd like to bring your attention to. We also found in Colorado that in-home cultivation and smoking of marijuana had a tremendous impact from one apartment to the other, one neighbor to the other. I'd like to share with you, I've had many community meetings in Rancho Cucamonga, and one lady in particular resides in a senior living community, an apartment, and the gentleman who lives underneath her is a a recreational marijuana smoker, and she lives above him with COPD. And since the passage of Prop 64, she's been hospitalized twice. Under Prop 64, the punishments are very weak. It is my professional opinion that they will likely not deter our youth in particular. A few examples of the weak punishments. If you are under 18 and we find you in possession of less than an ounce of marijuana, the most you could get from a court is 4 hours of drug education and up to 10 hours of community service. If a person between the age of 18 and 21 is found in possession of less than an ounce of marijuana, the most they could be punished is with a $100 fine. And I could go on and on. Feel free to look them up, but they are very, very mild corrective forms of punishment, in my opinion. It's going to take months for everyone in the state of California to understand not only Prop 64, but your local regulations as well. We found in Colorado that they are still learning how to manage their recreational marijuana amendment, and I imagine the state of California will go through those same growing pains. We have already seen many illegal cultivations, such as this one, in our residential communities. The picture that I'm showing you now was in Rancho Cucamonga on September 2nd. It was an investigation that resulted from a house fire. Since that time, my deputies, along with the marijuana team, have eradicated at least 9 residential, commercial marijuana cultivations. We don't yet know the position of the Department of Children and Family Services or the District Attorney's Office regarding parents who ingest marijuana in the presence of their children. In Colorado, they experienced a 20% increase in youth marijuana use, and that is 74 times higher than the national average. Also in Colorado, adult use is 104% higher than the national average. This is Deputy Derek Peterson and his narcotics detection canine Smokey. We purchased Smokey almost 3 years ago, and Smokey, just like every other narcotics detection canine in the country, does not differentiate between marijuana, methamphetamine, or the other controlled substances. Smokey only knows that he's looking for his toy, and his toy can smell like any of those things. When Smokey alerts on what he thinks is his toy, the deputy cannot differentiate between Smokey alerting on marijuana or methamphetamine, etc. That poses a serious challenge for us. We invested quite a bit of money in this team, and we now have to revisit his deployment and training strategies, because if he alerts on something and we discover that it is a legal possession of marijuana, it has rendered his alert outside the parameters of probable cause. We're going to have some significant training. This image I took while I was in Colorado, and these are all marijuana products that are produced and packaged to replicate commonly known candy bars. Obviously, you can see Keef Cat stands out there in the middle as opposed to a Kif Cat, the OEO instead of the Oreo, and I could go on, but you can see the picture. We have to learn what the state regulations are going to be on packaging, what is legal with the packaging and what is not. Then we have to train our peace officers throughout the state of California, as well as code enforcement, etc., on what is legal and what is not.
Can I stop you on the packaging for a minute?
Yes, ma'am.
Wouldn't the makers of those candy bars have an issue with them using similar logos?
I have not done the legal research, but I did ask that question in Colorado, and I was told that so far their civil lawsuits against these manufacturers were unsuccessful, because apparently they're very intelligent people, and apparently the packaging is just different enough that it's not an infringement on the candy makers' copyrights.
Wow.
This will also be an interesting challenge for parents. We're going to have to provide a lot of training through our schools to our parents on what to look for in their children's day-to-day activities. The calls for service will not just impact public safety in the way of law enforcement. We found in Colorado a significant increase in calls for service for your fire departments as well. A lot of folks that are growing marijuana in their homes and trying to extract THC are doing very dangerous things, such as electrical bypass, and they're purchasing equipment with very volatile chemicals in order to extract THC, and they're doing it in their homes. Colorado saw an increase of, I'll get to that in a minute, a significant increase in home explosions. I will tell you that the picture on the bottom right corner that I just brought up was just taken in September of this year in Rancho Cucamonga, where an electrical panel caught fire, and it was due to a bypass for a marijuana cultivation. In Colorado, they saw a 29% increase in marijuana-related emergency room visits in 1 year. So our health services will be impacted as well. Exposures of marijuana to children between the ages of 0 and 5 years old increased 138% in a 1 year period in Colorado. Here's a local story about a THC extraction lab explosion. In Colorado, in 2013, they only had 12 THC extraction lab explosions, and in 2014, they saw 32. So in 1 year, it doubled. We have already seen these here in the Southern California area. This particular gentleman was being sought after a THC explosion in Anaheim, and they tracked him down sometime later. It was in the in the local paper there in Orange County. One of the other challenges is these large cultivations. When we go in with a search warrant and we're seizing the plants, then how do we store them? In the state of Colorado, they had a very frightening situation where they had a legal search warrant. They went into a commercial cultivation. They seized all of the plants. They cannot store them because we don't have greenhouses the way the cultivars do. The marijuana was essentially destroyed. The court dismissed the charges against the defendant and ordered the police department to pay restitution to the cultivar in the tune of over, I believe it was just, well, I'll just say it was well over $200,000. They took that case as far as they could in the court system fighting it, and a very recent opinion was just rendered that the police department is not responsible for that reimbursement, thank goodness. But what Colorado, the mistake they made is they did not prepare for that, where they could have, in the amendment, they could have put limits on civil litigation arising from the destruction of marijuana plants. We don't have that in this state yet either, so we're going to have to be very cautious as we proceed with these seizures. This is called hotboxing. For those of you in the room who have never heard of hotboxing, it's where young people essentially lock themselves in their car, they roll up the windows, they turn off the air, and they smoke marijuana so that everybody in the car gets the enjoyment of inhaling the smoke, and they share essentially the marijuana smoke coming off of one joint rather than passing it around. It's a very popular activity. Again, in Colorado, we had visited a very nice dispensary, and 5 of the group were waiting in the parking lot for one of the stragglers in our group to come out. While we were standing in the parking lot, we watched a group of 3 young men, probably 18 or 19 years old, come out of the dispensary with their purchase. They got into the car, they hotboxed for about, and they drove away. That's obviously an intoxicated driver with 2 or 3 intoxicated passengers. So if in the city of Grand Terrace you restrict such activities, you have to bear in mind that not only, of course, will there be scofflaws that ignore the penal code and your municipal codes, but if it's allowed in a neighboring city such as San Bernardino, and these young men get in the car after hotboxing there and travel home to Grand Terrace, they're still a direct threat to this community. In Denver, there are 198 dispensaries, 117 pharmacies, legitimate pharmacies. So the numbers are amazing. The businesses grow very quickly. Some other enforcement challenges are intoxicated drivers. This is directly from the Rocky Mountain HIDA report, and I'd like to just point out some of the numbers, if you don't mind. In 2006, there were 37 fatalities at the hands of a marijuana-intoxicated driver. In 2014, that number jumped to 94. Prosecuting DUI, marijuana-related DUI, is going to be very challenging. I'd like to start by going straight to the money. In order for a deputy sheriff to take a blood alcohol test at the West Valley Detention Center, the cost back to this community is 50 cents. A deputy sheriff testing for marijuana in the body has to draw blood, and that costs $120 a test. It's very expensive compared to blood alcohol. We heard this time and time again on our visit to Colorado. Marijuana testing is expensive, and it's simpler prosecution for alcohol, so why bother testing for the marijuana? Marijuana dispensaries are very attractive to thieves. Colorado saw it. They have some statistics to support it. The dispensaries work in cash. Cash is king for the crooks as well as everyone else. The bad guys know that the marijuana dispensaries collect a lot of cash throughout the day, and as their employees leave at the end of the day to make deposits with that cash in their hand, they are vulnerable, and the bad guys take great advantage of that. According to the officials that we visited with, their narcotics agents in Colorado, their narcotics agents saw their caseloads increase 3 to 4 times. Other types of narcotics investigations had to slow down because their focus had to turn to marijuana enterprises. Colorado also suffered from analysis paralysis. They struggled, a group of Colorado government officials from a variety of professions met for 18 months to try to develop a system to track marijuana-motivated crimes. They still have not come up with a consensus, and we do not have that here in California either. This portion of the presentation I'll go through a little bit more quickly. I'm not a subject matter on the fiscal impacts. I did get a lot of data from the city of Rancho Cucamonga's city manager's office, but I don't want to stand in front of you here tonight to pretend that I understand all of them. But I will tell you that they tell us that we will, as a state, realize savings because of the reduction in marijuana-related prosecutions and incarcerations. Therefore, our criminal justice monies should increase because our district attorneys, our judges, our probation departments, etc., will no longer have the marijuana laws to prosecute. They do tell us that driving under the influence grants will become available through the California Highway Patrol, but it's my understanding, as I am here tonight, that if you are a municipality who has banned marijuana, you will not be eligible for those grants. Taxation always stimulates the black market. Colorado has seen it. The marijuana advocates will tell you that that's not the case, but the men and women on the street that are combating the drug crime, the criminal activities surrounding narcotics will tell you otherwise. Colorado is now one of the greatest exporters of marijuana. Employer impacts. So far, employer rights have stood the test of the court system. That was of great interest to me because now that recreational marijuana is legal, do we, as an employer of deputy sheriffs, now have to hire folks who have been using marijuana? No, we do not. There is, though, a significant impact in Colorado that I would like to share with the group. For example, a gentleman owns a large construction company. He has a lot of heavy equipment and heavy equipment operators. Therefore, he, of course, has a lot of insurance. His insurance carrier requires that he has sober drivers, of course, and they require that he drug test his employees. That is completely legal, and it will remain legal insofar as the foreseeable future. What that particular employer has discovered, as have many others in the state of Colorado, is he cannot find employee candidates that test clean. He has to import employees from other states that do not have recreational marijuana. Here's just a quick overview of the tax structure, and it does say proposed because I used this slide before, I created this slide before Prop 64 passed, but this is actually the tax structure. 15% on retail sales, plus the 8% of San Bernardino County tax. And then the cultivation, the taxes go up a little bit, $9.25 per dry weight, $2.75 per dry weight on marijuana flowers versus leaves. The total tax rate is nearly 35%. There is a poison pill, as Lori likes to say, that if you ban your the cultivation and dispensaries, of course, we won't see that funding come to our cities. We may also see additional blocks from state grants for not just DUI driving, but there are the potential for other state grants that we would not be allowed to access if we ban in our municipality. Regarding land use, I'm not a subject matter expert either, but I will just share with you what we learned in Colorado. Every municipality in Colorado strongly recommended that you develop very specific, detailed land use regulations because so many people will want to cultivate in their homes because it's such a profitable endeavor. They found that although they could not pursue cultivation from a criminal position, if you had strong land use ordinances, then you could use that as an avenue to take corrective measures against cultivations that are outside of what you want in your city. Again, they use illegal electrical and plumbing work on a regular basis, so I would strongly suggest that your building safety experts consult with your land use experts to develop very defined codes. The grow houses take up a lot of industrial building space, and that means that the other neighbors in the industrial and commercial areas are impacted. There are several stories of businesses next door to dispensaries had to shut their doors because of the odor. One case in particular was a bridal shop in the downtown Denver area. They had been in business for a significant number of years, and a dispensary was allowed to move in next door, and the odor permeated their bridal gowns, so they had to relocate. These are some of the unanticipated consequences. The political impacts, this is my last slide. Although it passed overwhelmingly in the state of California, as it did in Colorado, the not in my backyard effect has taken place. There has been several surveys and studies done in Colorado that if that amendment were on the ballot today, it would be defeated. A lot of people in their state, and I believe in this state, didn't quite understand the impact that it could have on their personal lives. The odor, the access that their children are going to have, the difficulty in combating it, the difficulty in enforcing our regulations. And with that, I will close my presentation, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much, Captain. Council have any questions at this time? Mayor Pro Tem?
I have a request and a question. I can't read this, and it's an important slide on. So what they're saying then, if we ban having any recreational pot sales, we will not see any grants from the state for public safety funding.
That is what we're being told by the California Highway Patrol, that if a municipality has banned recreational dispensaries and commercial cultivations, that we will not be considered for their DUI grants.
Okay.
If that has changed recently, I know there's a lot of legislation moving around in Sacramento to tweak this Prop 64. I have not heard that it's changed recently. I would hope that it would, because our borders are very porous, and the DUI driver from the city next door could be driving through ours, and we need to have strong enforcement.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hussey?
Captain, thank you for coming out tonight and once again informed. And the thing is that really inform the public on this. I know a lot of people that they voted for the passing of this, but the insight, what's going on with the law enforcement side and all the other legal issues that happen, and what's the effect on the marijuana, and then also what you mentioned, the THC level. It wasn't like it back in the 60s or 70s. The THC levels really potent and what could happen to the kids, and also with the law enforcement background, knowing that this can also bring up for experimenting with other drugs, PCP and everything, going like that. But our best thing to do is to inform the public. And, yeah, it's pretty scary if you see, not DUIs, but they're driving in our cities, what could happen, and what the law enforcement, what they can and cannot do. It's a sticky situation. I understand that. And, it's going to take time, but also the effects on people trying to make a living and have a legit business, and then this affecting their product, and neighborhoods changing because of this. 6 plants per person household, 3 families move in one household. We can't do anything about it. And then you have traffic coming because basically, I don't think they're going to smoke that much pot, but they're going to call their buddies and they're going to sell the pot. Then we have another problem going on there where crime's going to go up. My biggest concern, crime's gone up, and what have you seen? You've seen a lot of, break-in entries, grabbing low-level things, jewelry, something easy to pawn, because an ounce of marijuana is $250 an ounce. I mean, how could a young person afford $250 for an ounce of marijuana? I'm not going to pay $250. $250 is still a lot of money. I could use, groceries are expensive. So they're using that brings up crime. So when they say, it's not going to, bring up crime, not going to do it, but you have to look at the overall big picture. And I really appreciate you breaking this down. And I wish, before it came to vote, that it was, you didn't hear that much about it. You just heard about, it's going to save us for the tax rate. It's going to save us for that. Well, then again, it's not fairly, the feds don't recognize it. So how do you do that? Buy it, you have to use cash transactions. What's going to happen? You have to hire Brinks. You have to have somewhere for the money to store. And like you said, that brings another crime element. Somebody's going to stake out that dispensary and cash transaction. And then again, another thing is that person that owns that business, is he going to be truthful? Hey, I had a bad month. I only sold 500 when he actually sold 10,000. There's no way of keeping track. But I appreciate you breaking it down for the public and, for the people that are watching on TV, just to give them like an insight on it. But I don't have any question. I thank you for coming out here tonight, and presenting this, and I really appreciate getting back with me on that. And I really enjoyed it when we had the League of Cities. But thank you for everything.
I appreciate you inviting me, and I'd be happy to come back anytime.
Okay. Councilmember Renars, did you have any questions? Okay. I have 2 questions.
Yes,
What
ma'am.
has the city of Rancho Cucamonga decided to do with this issue?
We've banned commercial cultivation and dispensaries. We've banned as much as we possibly can under Prop 64.
Okay. And do you know, based on your trip to Colorado, how they were able to tax cultivation successfully or even successfully tax sales?
Well, from my latest reading, there is diverging opinion on that. Because marijuana is strictly a cash business, the marijuana industry cannot use our federally insured banking industry. So they are strictly a cash business. And although they are seeing a significant amount of taxing or tax revenues, there is tremendous speculation that, just as Councilman Hussey said, that they're probably not reporting everything. Their tracking mechanisms are weak at best.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to the consent calendar. These items will be acted upon by the City Council at one time without discussion. We have 3 items on the consent calendar. Are there any that my colleagues would like to remove at this time? Councilmember Hussey?
Yeah, item 3.
Item 3, okay. Any others? All right, I'll entertain a motion for the other 2.
I'll move adoption of the consent calendar items 1 and 2.
Second.
All right, please vote. Okay, Councilmember Hussey. Oh, you were going to, go ahead. Thank you. Councilmember Hussey, item 3, approval of check register. You have questions on that item?
Yeah, Mayor, I was going through the check register, and one caught my eye because I haven't seen it before. And I guess it's an annual one, but it's on page 35, packet page 35, the bottom. And I'd just like to get some clarification on this, on Herman Hinckley for the amount of, for life insurance benefit reimbursement for 1626. Is this an annual thing that we're paying, and why are we paying it, and what's the status, and is this ever going to go up on this thing for life insurance, or is this something that was in the past brought up?
That's Councilmember Herman Hilke that you're
Is it-
referring to?
Is that what it is, Herman? Yeah, Councilmember.
And would you want to address this, Ms.
Yes.
Fortune?
Councilmember Hussey, the former councils way back passed a resolution that certain council members who had served on council for a certain number of years were entitled to medical or life insurance reimbursement annually for the duration of, for the rest of their life. This benefit has since been rescinded, so no future council members will ever get the benefit. However, when they rescinded it, they allowed it to be grandfathered to the remaining council members at the time. And Councilmember Herman Hilke was one of them.
Okay, is there a maximum for this benefit, or does it go up every year for it?
No, the max is $1,800
Okay, thank you.
annually. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Did you want to move this item? Would you like to move this item?
Yes.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to approve a check register number 02282017 in the amount of $791,152.95 is submitted and includes a check register account index for fiscal year 2016 and 17.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, please vote.
Motion passes. Councilmember Reynars and Councilmember Hussey vote yes. Mayor Pro Tem Robles votes yes, and Mayor McNamara votes yes.
We'll move to public comment, and this is an opportunity for the public to speak on any items not on the agenda for tonight. According to restrictions in California law, the City Council may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda, but may briefly statements made or ask for a question for clarification. I may also request a brief response from staff to questions raised during public comments and may request the matter be agendized for a future meeting. Do we have any requests to speak at this time? No. Is there anybody here that would like to speak? Please come forward, and if you would, state your name for the record. And while you're making your way up there, I will explain that we don't have our timing lights in working order right now, and we do like to restrict to 3 minutes. However, it's not fair to you if you don't know how long you've been speaking. So we do have a clock up here that will run. Once it hits zero, if you'd wrap up if you are at that point.
Okay, I don't have that much to say. I'd just like to thank the city for coming out and taking care of the trees all through the town. There's some other areas in town that I look forward to seeing the trees be taken care of or removed in town, but I think it's been great for the neighborhoods. I notice a difference as I'm driving around, and I think that's a very good thing, so thank you very much, and that was what the walk down the steps was for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. Bobby Forbes. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak tonight? Okay, seeing no takers, I'll close public comment and come to council for their communications, beginning with Councilmember Reinars.
Thank you, Mayor. On March 1st, I attended my San Bernardino County Gang and Drug Task Force meeting, and the subject was gangs and autism spectrum disorder. The speaker was Beth Burt from the Autism Society of the Inland Empire, and she started out her presentation with some statistics and numbers that I found interesting. And they start with 40% of residents of Juvenile Hall in San Bernardino County are special needs in some spectrum of autism children, 35% in the county jails, are diagnosed with some sort of autism, and that percentage is even higher in state prisons. 1 in 68 children in the United States are diagnosed with autism. That number is 4.5 times more prevalent in boys, which is 1 in 42 children, and in girls it's 1 in 89 children. We have 12,000 autistic people in the Inland Empire. If the Inland Empire were a state, we would have the 27th largest autistic population in the United States. There are some cultural issues in the Inland Empire that stop families from seeking help. Over half of families surveyed that have autistic children believe that it will just go away. If they ignore it, they'll grow out of it, or it will just go away, so that creates issues. There's been an explosion of autism from the late 80s. About 20% of that explosion is due to better identification of the actual syndrome, and 40% of it is due to an increase in genetic and environmental issues. About half of people with autism have average to above average intellectual ability, and about 1/3 of autistic individuals have epilepsy as well, so there seems to be some sort of connection there. They have not so far found any connection to Marisol, which is mercury, in vaccinations. There could be a connection to a combination of live viruses given at the same time, so that mumps, MMR, rubella shot that kids get, but the studies aren't complete on that. So as of right now, there's no official link to vaccinations. As with anybody, all autistic people are different, but in general, they tend to be nonverbal. They repeat phrases over and over. They have difficulty taking turns. They have difficulty with abstract concepts such as humor. Mainly, when they talk, it's restricted to one very isolated topic over and over. They act as if people can read their minds. They sometimes have a sing-song cadence to speech or robot-like speech. And sometimes that can create issues when it comes to police contact. Answers to questions a lot of times can look like the person's being a smart aleck or trying to crack wise with the police, when in reality it's a form of autism that they have. And the appearance, they may rock back and forth, they may talk to themselves, they get drawn to shiny objects, have a hard time focusing sometimes. So when you're having a discussion with them, again, this could be a problem during a police contract. They can lunge or they can reach or something like that, and it can create a problem. They prefer to be alone. They're not typically afraid of real danger. They don't have a sense of what real danger is or what it looks like. They don't like to be touched, so they can kind of freak out if they get touched generally. They laugh sometimes at inappropriate times, giggle. They react with flight or fight. If they sense danger, they react to it. They're not necessarily afraid, but they react to it. And a lot of these behaviors can mimic drug intoxication or alcohol intoxication, which again can create an issue with a police contact. She did show us a video of an autistic teenager being interviewed, and to me it looked exactly like intoxication videos that I've seen in the past. Sometimes it's very difficult to distinguish between the two. An autistic individual is 7 times more likely to have an encounter with law enforcement. They tend to wander away. They sometimes create disturbances, and the family calls the police to come out. And they can be sexually inappropriate at times. They're often abused. An autistic child is 3 times more likely to be abused. Over 90% of developmentally disabled people will experience sexual abuse in their life. 49% will experience that over 10 times. And they can be attractive to gangs. A teenager or a young adult who's autistic can be attractive to gangs and being recruited because they tend to be socially naive. They want friends, they need acceptance, and where can you find acceptance on the street? In a gang. And they tend to be outcasts at school, so they're alone. They're a good target for someone looking to recruit for gangs. They use them as carriers. Autistic children are often used as drug carriers. You just hand them the drug, they do what they're told with it, and they're very open to suggestions. So the message That task force is largely made up of law enforcement personnel, so the message is that a lot of training is needed for police personnel to distinguish between an intoxicated individual and perhaps a developmentally or mentally disabled individual. And that wraps up that one. Last night, I attended something that was kind of neat that I hadn't seen before, and it was a bridge committee with some school board members and council members and the city manager, and we discussed issues of importance jointly to the city of Grand Terrace and to the school district. And I thought that was really valuable. We discussed some things like the new roundabout coming out on the freeway by Barton Way and the soccer fields, and just, it's a good way of contacting and having an open dialogue with the school district, so as things come up, they can be dealt with. But Councilman Hussey was there as well, and the city manager, they can discuss it as well. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Councilmember Reinhardt. Councilmember Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. A couple things. March 1st, I got to read at an elementary school in Cooley Ranch because I didn't get to do March 2nd, but it was a reading, Cat in the Hat, and I did Sam I Am, Green Eggs and Ham. So when I got done with that, I went to Miguel's Jr., got a Green Peak burrito because I was hungry. But it was really neat. If you guys ever get to experience that, it's great, taking the books. And you got to bring more than one book because the kids want to hear, more than just one story. And they all love it, and they know those books inside out. But the teachers, commend them. They controlled the class, and it was just a great experience. Then right after that, I went to the Colton Joint Unified School District Community Cabinet meeting, and the topic was learning in the 21st century. We had two separate groups of kids. We had kids from kindergarten and we had kids from high school. The high school kids was the engineering class with Mr. Johnson, and they did some demo work for us on, they made like an elevator, they did some like a cookie conveyor belt, they did some program logic controls on there, and it was really neat, and got to meet Mr. Johnson. I know Mr. Johnson, the Lions Club works with them, but I like to have him come over and I talk to Mr. Duffy to do like a little demonstration or do something on, so we can see it, even like during our Grand Terrace days. These kids really work hard on it, and I know they have a robotics thing and stuff. It'd be pretty neat to have that out there, have the kids do like a robotic competition. But, very talented kids. I mean, you could just see they love what they're doing. They love, learning that, and they love, it's just really neat. Now, then we had a group of kindergartners, little 5 and 6 year olds, and they're what they call tech savvy kindergartners. So I'm just going to tell you the comparison. I went to kindergarten in 1969. We ate glue, we took naps, and we played on the monkey bars. These kids are doing iPads, iPad QR codes, iPad Raz Kids app reading, iPad Osmo, Chromebooks, sign-ins. They're doing everything. There was like 4 of those guys just amazed. So I think if we need interns, we could go recruit that elementary school and they could run our programs for us here. But the little girl, she was just going through there like crazy, and it was just second nature. So, learning a big difference in kindergarten, because that's, our future. Is the techs going out and learning all that, and then, of course, the engineers, and then, of course, people building it. We can't forget about the ones out there building this stuff. But I was just really amazed on that. And then, I don't know if anybody's going to talk about, but I'm sure they are, but the Blue Mountain Hike. I want to thank the city staff and all the volunteers for making that possible. It was cold up there, but it was a beautiful day. It was, when you see the wildflowers in full bloom and how green, that's probably the richest green I've seen that mountain up there, then looking over there in the canyon. And it, I would think if I was going to go to Ireland, you see on postcards, that's what it looked like. It was just beautiful. We had a good turnout. I think it was over 800 people came to hike the mountain, and then, of course, went down to, I burned all those calories hiking that mountain, then I went and had a hot dog at Azure Hills, so that was worth it. But it was really good. We had a fellowship up there, and we prayed over Grand Terrace, and then Dennis Kidd had a pastor there, and we had a little service there. And it was a really unique thing. I mean, I'd love to see, when we have our hiking trail, and maybe one day do a sunrise service up there. That would be really nice. And but as we're walking up there, I know we had residents worried about Westwood Street, and as I know the mayor sent out things saying invite people to come up and hike, and as we're on top of the mountain, we're actually seeing people walk still on Westwood. So I don't, what we can do else to help that. But it was just a beautiful day, beautiful hike, good group of people, volunteers out there, the kids handing out water, and then thank you, city manager, for making sure the roads were all, clear. They were nice and smooth. There's no ruts and stuff, so people didn't get hurt. And like Councilman Ramirez said, the bridge committee, we talked. The main thing was focusing on the Grand Terrace Elementary School, making it safe for the kids for when they're crossing the streets, and for parents when they're dropping their kids off. Because when we do have that construction going on, it's going to be a headache for 12 to 18 months. So we're throwing ideas out there to try to, curtail some of that. Some were, changing the times to drop the kids off, the traffic signals, to what to do with that school. So I know they talked about, we're going to try to get a community workshop going for the parents there so they could have their ideas, their input, because we want to hear, they have usually the best ideas, so we want to hear that. So there'll be more information on that, because, overall we want to make sure the kids are safe when they go to that school with all the construction. And once again, thank you everybody for coming out, and God bless. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Hussey. Mayor Pro Tem Robles?
Okay, I'm going to try to be quick. I also had some meetings. On March 2nd, I did Reading Across America at the Grand Terrace Elementary School. Very rewarding, did 2 classes. I was actually going to be afraid of the kids. I thought they would be bored. They were very nice, very pleasant, and was made me want to almost substitute teach. Third, the mayor and I met with Assemblymember Reyes and her staff that would be representing Grand Terrace. I was there because I set it up. We don't have any ad hoc committees yet. We need to have some kind of workshop where we can look at our rules and procedures as we're going to work as a body on that. But the city manager took the lead in bringing in a list of projects that he's been working on that would need some state support, and I'll let the mayor continue on that topic. I had Amatrans and the Metro Study Group with the San Bernardino Transportation Agency on the 9th. With Amatrans, we did the annual evaluation of the CEO. We completed union negotiations on salaries for 2 groups. And so now we're ready to, our staff has the parameters as far as salaries now to begin budget preparation for Omnitrans. And that's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I attended on March 1st the San Bernardino County Transit Authority Council of Governments, and so I'll report on the items that were not as part of the Metro Valley Study Session and the General Policy Committee. We did meet with our labor negotiators in closed session. We also met with legal counsel on existing litigation and 2 potential cases of anticipated litigation. Under consent for project delivery, we authorized release of RFP for procurement of construction management services for the widening of US 395. So if there's anyone that takes 395, they're going to start construction on that soon. We approved a second amendment to a contract with Southern California Regional Rail Authority for the design and construction support for the Eastern Maintenance Facility in downtown San Bernardino passenger rail project. We also approved the third amendment with Parsons Brinkerhoff for construction management for that same passenger rail facility. We provided direction to staff to complete study to determine feasibility and operational parameters and capital operation investment required for expanding hybrid rail passenger service on the San Gabriel subdivision beyond its currently planned terminus at San Bernardino Transit Center. One of my colleagues was suggesting that we look at hybrid rail for the Redlands Rail project that they're doing too, but they have actually looked into doing that and found that the rail right-of-way is not wide enough on each side. And we approved the City of Upland's request to charge for parking at the Upland Metrolink station. So if you're going to take Metrolink and you're going to Upland, you're going to pay for parking. Under consent for transportation programming and fund administration, we received presentation from MMA Transit Planning regarding public transit human services transportation coordination for San Bernardino County. We approved the Public Transit Human Services Transportation Coordination Plan for the county for 2016 through 2020. We approved a state transit assistant fund population share apportionment for fiscal year 17-18. We maintain the fiscal year 16-17 local transportation fund apportionment. We approved a low carbon transit operations program. We received and filed a report on the Measure I history, trends, and projections. One of the interesting things with that had to do with the way that they're collecting Measure I funds. We appointed Thomas Gaffery and Donald Driftmeyer to be members of the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee. This is a committee charged with making sure that Measure I funds are spent in a fashion that is in accordance with the Measure I that was passed by the taxpayers. So the way that they've set up a number of these seats is you have to have a specific background, and you can't be an employee of any company or any agency that would receive funding through Measure I. And so we had 3 openings, and we were able to appoint 2 qualified candidates to 2 of those 3 openings. We received a report from Mothers Against Drunk Driving and their activities in San Bernardino, and they've been very active lately. They did not get into a lot of the discussion about just driving while under the influence, although that is something that they look at, not just drivers that are under the influence of alcohol, but other, be they prescription drugs or illegal substances. That is an item that they are getting into presenting on and bringing awareness to the community. So we also had a legislative update. We had hearings to consider resolutions of necessity for parcels for the US 395 widening, and one of the parcels that was under consideration had somebody come during that time and speak during public comment and ask for an extension to the time allowed for them to find somebody to do an assessment of the value of their land, and they were granted that extension. There was a HERO program update, and we removed that from the agenda. On March 2nd, I had the opportunity to attend both Terrace View and Grand Terrace Elementary School celebration for Dr. Seuss's birthday, which meant reading a lot of books to a lot of children, and that was a good time. At Terrace View, I read to a couple of first grade classes, but I also read to an assembly of 6th graders. So it was interesting to see the difference and really to see that the 6th graders are just as interested in listening to somebody read to them, probably something nonsensical, and they find that interesting, as it is for the first graders. And it was a very nice experience at Grand Terrace Elementary School as well. And what I have to say is that the teachers and the parents that are involved in putting these days together really put in a lot of energy and effort. And it's so nice to see how much they are really wanting the children to have fun with their learning, and they go all out with it, and the children seem to really enjoy it. I also, as Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, met with Assembly Member Eloise Reyes and the City Manager. We went over a number of items, such as our Municipal Investment Development to Achieve Success program, our Streets and Roads program, our Tree Trimming and Open Space program, our opportunity to perhaps form an EIFD and looking at cap and trade funding opportunities, our dog park plan. We had quite a bit to share with the Assembly member, and I think that she was very impressed with the amount of plans and projects that we have going on in the city of Grand Terrace. In fact, I think that we took up more of her time than she had thought we were going to, which I was very pleased about. So there will be time to have her come and visit with us again, because we need to talk with her some more about regional cooperation on access to the Santa Ana River trails and support for public safety funds and other things like that. And so I thought it was nice that we didn't finish in 5 minutes and have her looking at us like, okay, so what else are you doing? I think she was very pleasantly surprised, especially since this is her hometown, and I think we're doing her very proud. On March 8th, I had a San Bernardino County Transit Authority and Council of Governments General Policy Committee. During discussion on administrative matters, we had a number of reports that we recommended for approval by the board. We had a procurement report. We had a recommendation to award contract for financial auditing services. We reviewed and provided direction relative to proposed tasks to be included in the fiscal year 17-18 budget. We received a Transit Operators and Transportation Development Act audit report. We received an update on fiscal year 16-17 work goals and objectives for the second and third quarters. We discussed air quality and traveler services, specifically getting a yearly update on the status of the Inland Empire's 511 system. Those of you who are not aware, we have a system within Riverside and San Bernardino County where if you call 511, you can receive information about all the construction that is going on in the Inland Empire. This was conceived in the Federal Communications Commission designated 511 as a single travel information telephone number on July 21st of 2000, and in our jurisdiction we launched it in 2010. It provides the source of information, as I said, not only for transit, rideshare, and then real-time traffic incidents. There are 3 ways to access the system. You can find it online at www.511.org. You can download an app for your smartphone or either Android or Apple, or if you dial 511 from a cell phone or landline. You can also access it outside of the Inland Empire by calling 877-MY, as in my, IE 511. So in the nearly 7 years since its launch, in 2012, the smartphone application for Apple and Android was launched, and it has had more than 54,000 downloads to date. In 2016, the system assisted more than 209,000 callers, and it has hosted 530,000 website visits. Launched more than 2.4 million callers total and 2.7 million website visitors since April of 2010. We received information pertaining to the Freeway Service Patrol Program. Those are the tow trucks that cruise the freeways to help stranded motorists. Every year they look at an update of how well it's been implemented, and they also choose drivers and recognize them for their outstanding abilities and skills and service provided, and they are awarded a commendation in front of the Sandbag board. We at Sandbag had a grant writing service update given to us, this was the General Policy Committee. So we're going to be getting the grant writing services update. The Sandbag board contracted with Blaze and Associates to not only look for grant opportunities, but also to write the proposals. In some of those, they work with other agencies. They do include staff assistance for many of them, but what they're finding at this date is that for every dollar that the County Transportation Authority and Council of Governments has invested in this contract, they have received $11 back for their $1 investment in their grants received. So at this point, they believe that they have done a very good job in their selection. We looked at a final feasibility study for community choice aggregation. That is the Council of Governments portion has decided to team with the Western Riverside County Council of Government to look at an alternative for providing energy to residents within both counties. This would be a choice of through Southern California Edison. If this to go through the community choice aggregation to receive their electricity. They have determined to authorize staff to continue collaborative efforts towards this and to see which cities would like to participate in this outreach. So there's more to come on that. They are still in the investigation stage. We recommended approval and agreement between Caltrans and the San Bernardino County Transit Authority establishing standards for implementation of projects when the County Transportation Authority acts as the administration agent for federal aid projects. And on March 9th, I attended the San Bernardino Municipal Water District Commission on Water Policy. So we got a brief update on the draft for the Valley District Policy for the declaration and sale of surplus water. So we got a little bit of rain, and now we're talking about selling surplus water. What they've done is they've come up with a determination of what the board can look at specifically to know if the region has surplus water, in that they can sell pumping rights to other regional agencies. We won't at this time be doing any of that, but they wanted to at least set up the guidelines for being able to determine when there was surplus water that could be sold, and then in what mechanisms they would use to sell it. We received an update of the California Water Fix, the State Water Project also, and we had an update on the Groundwater Sustainability Council. The Regional Water Management Plan Statement for 2017 was given to us. We have had an above average amount of rain this year. However, we are still needing to have a number of above average years of rain to bring us back to where we need to be. We are in a good position groundwater-wise. The other thing that we are hearing is, because this is one of the wettest winters in the state's history, there is a lot of water for the state water project. Our municipal water district does buy state water project water to help with artificial recharge, and so their idea is during the wet years you buy, because you can buy it at lower prices, you recharge the groundwater, and you have that to use in the dry years. And so that is what they are doing with the excess water statewide. We had an update on the Santa Ana River Conservation and Conjunctive Use projects, and we talked about having a bus tour of district facilities. If there are any other residents that might be interested in such a tour, please let me know, and I'll see when the dates are and how many spaces they have available. Lastly, I did enjoy the Blue Mountain hike. It's always a nice time to do that, and this year was especially nice because of the wildflowers. And so I think I've spoken long enough on my report, so I will end right here. Thank you for your patience and attention. Our next item is public hearings, of which we have none. Following that, unfinished business, we have none. We will go to new business, and our item number 4 is a child care update report. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name is Linda Phillips. I'm the Director for the Child Care Services. This is the 2016-17 Child Care Services Contract Update. Our core services are the preschool, child care, before and after school care, and our Tiny Tots, which is a 3-hour learning session. Right now, our Tiny Tots sit at a 12-to-1 ratio. We have 2 teachers. We've met our goal, 24 current contracts. We have no wait list. Our before and after school care at Townsview Elementary is a 14-to-1 ratio. We have 2 teachers. Our goal is 28. We currently have 24. Our Grand Terrace Elementary before and after school care is a 14-to-1 ratio. We have 1 teacher. Our goal is 28. We currently have 14. Our preschool is 2 to 5 years old. Our ratio is a 12 to 1. We have 4 teachers. Our goal is 48. We currently have 51 children. The 5th teacher acts as a floater between the classrooms, depending upon which classroom has over 12. Our kangaroos are our infants. Our ratio is a 4 to 1. We have 3 teachers. Our goal was 12, and we have met that. The current contracts, as I have stated, the Tiny Tots is 24. Our ratio is 12 to 1. The Tiny Tot budget goal met, 24 children. Before and after school, 14 to 1, 2 teachers. We've met that goal. Grand Terrace Elementary, 14 contracted children, 14 to 1 ratio, 1 teacher. School age budgeted goal has not been met. We were budgeted for 56 children. We currently only have 14 contracted children. Grand Terrace Child Care Services, the preschool 2 to 5 years old, we have 3 classes, each with 12 contracted children. Ratio is 12 to 1. The Turtle class has 15 contracted children with 2 teachers. Our preschool budgeted goal has been met and surpassed. We have 51 contracted children. Our kangaroos, 12 contracted, 3 teachers, 4 to 1 ratio. Our budgeted goal was 12, and we've met that. Our revenue and expenses, Tiny Tots, 56,800. Before and after school, 334, 44, 500. Our preschool is 636, 580. Grant revenues, which is our nutrition program, which is 32,000. Total revenues, 1,059,830. Our expenditures, 773,298. The overhead cost and expensive items, 286,532. Total expenditures, 1,059,830. This is the revenue and expenses actuals as of 1/31/17. Tiny Tots is 31,529. Before and after school is 132,784. Preschool is 326,525. The nutrition so far to date has brought in $14,006. Total revenues, $504,845. Expenditures, salaries and benefits, $372,752. Expense items and overhead costs, $141,700. Total expenses, $514,452. Revenues, as of 1/31/17, $504,845. Expenditures, $514,452. Net, negative, $9,608. The factors contributing to the current deficit, the nutrition program is always 30-plus days out, so we're still missing funds from there. State subsidized families have not received reimbursement. Again, that's 30 to 60 days out. And some of our families who have 3 to 4 children are making the payments, but they're a little slow on them. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. So for these factors that contribute to the deficit, are we confident that they will make up the difference in the expenses?
Yes. We're already working with the families. They're bringing in the money. It's just really slow. It's income times. They've all promised to catch up.
Okay.
The nutrition program, again, that money's already coming in. It's just a matter of waiting for the mail. And the same with the state subsidies.
Okay. So we know what the amounts are, and we know that they'll cover those.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Does council have any questions at this time? Councilmember Hussey.
Thank you for your report. Question, are we still on track or how much does the city or the child care, our general fund?
Yes, so part of the council's goal this year, sir, was to ensure that the city, that the child care program did not cost the city any money in terms for the general fund. But there is the liability or the expense from the previous years. I believe that's somewhere around, was it $400,000 or $500,000? About $300,000. But, part of the council's goal was to have contracts to ensure that, as the mayor's question earlier, was to ensure that can we make up these revenue shortfalls? And we have the contracts in place. So we're expecting this year to be balanced completely. And it does not address the previous year's debt.
Okay, so how are we going to address the previous years on the money that they owe the general fund?
Well, so what the staff will do is come back to the council with a strategy. For example, the strategy this past year was to ensure that the program didn't cost the general fund for operations. We are aware, and we made the council aware, that although we are covering the operating cost, we are not covering the long-term, the unfunded liability. And so that's one issue that we have. And then we haven't addressed what's owed from the past. So we'll come back to the council with some recommendations. We were given some direction in the beginning of the year, and we've been following that direction. We hope to return to the council with a strategy that will finally address this issue.
Okay, well, thank you again for your report.
Any other questions at this time? All right, thank you, Director Phillips. And this is a receive and file?
Correct.
All right, thank you. Go to item number 5, which is the adoption of the Grand Terrace Emergency Operations Plan.
I move the item.
To receive and file?
Yes, vote for the resolution, because we spent a whole
Oh,
meeting on this already.
for the Emergency Operations Plan?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing no takers, I'll bring it back to council. Are there any questions at this time before we vote? All right, please vote. Thank you for that report, Director Molina. We'll move to item 6, which is approval of resolution designating the Public Works Director and/or City Engineer with the discretionary authority to give approval of public improvement plans and specifications.
The clerk needs to read out the results of the vote.
That's the second time I've done that to you, huh? Yes, please do.
To adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace, State of California, adopting the City of Grand Terrace 2017 Emergency Operations Plan. Council members Ray Narson Husky vote yes, Mayor Pro Tem votes yes, and Mayor McEnroe votes yes.
Thank you. And I understand that. One more strike and I will leave, I promise. Okay, item 6, may we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Mayor and Honorable City Council. My name is Alan French. I am the new Public Works Director, City Engineer, and we have a consultant, Chris Voigt from Interwest Consultant, who will speak on that item.
All right, thank you. Welcome, Mr. French.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Before you tonight is a resolution for under Government Code Section 830.6. Under that Government Code section, the City Council and the city is actually indemnified against all design for projects that you put in place. The Government Code section actually states that if the governing body approves the plans and specifications prior to bidding the project, then the city is provided design immunity. The design engineer who stamps the plans has the responsibility to hold the city harmless. However, the city gets pulled into lawsuits through deep pockets. Before you tonight is a resolution that is designating the authority for the design immunity to the Public Works Director and/or City Engineer of the city. This provides a number of things for the city. Every set of plans then that are approved by the Public Works Director and/or the City Engineer, the city automatically gets design immunity, which streamlines your construction process instead of bringing those plans forward to the City Council each time. The other thing that this provides, however, that goes above and beyond, is any field changes that may occur when that Public Works Director or City Engineer signs off on those change orders or field changes or design changes during construction, you have that design immunity as well. So that is before you tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff at this time? Okay, no questions. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on this item? Okay. No request to speak forms, no takers. I will close public comment and bring it back to council for consideration of a motion.
Move adoption of the resolution.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and second. Please vote. Waiting this time for the reading of the results.
Mayor, motion passes. Adopting resolution of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace, County San Bernardino, State of California, designating the Public Works Director and/or City Engineer with the discretionary authority to give approval of public improvement plans or designs. Council members Reynars and Hussey vote yes. Mayor Pro Tem votes yes, and Mayor votes yes.
All right, thank you. Item number 7, this is the award of contract for landscape maintenance services.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, this item before you tonight is to award the annual landscape maintenance services contract. It's actually a 5-year contract that was bid. You originally had a contract that was won back in February 2014 by Easy Sunny Day Landscape Services. That was a 1-year contract with 2 renewable years. That contract was up in February. The last 2 months we've been going on a month-to-month basis until we got the bids in and completed and before the City Council. 3 bids came in. The lowest responsive and responsible bidder was again Easy Sunny Day Landscape Services out of Rialto. Interestingly enough, their contract actually decreased about $10,000 from the last year, and that's the results of a good bidding environment and probably the contractor knowing the city very well. We never had any problems with Sunny Day. They've actually done a very good job for this contract. And out of the 3 bids, they were the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. I would like to point out in the contract under the fiscal impact, the $22,000 that you see is actually the extension of contract that we have done. The fiscal impact, of course, of this contract would be an amount of $45,430, of which is paid for by Lighting and Landscape District and the General Fund. That concludes my report, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. I do have one question.
Yes.
When I was looking at their areas that they landscape, it seemed like on Barton Road it ended at Victoria to the east and it didn't go beyond that. So I'm wondering if they actually go Victoria to Glendora.
That's a very good question. We do have Chad, and I hope I say his name right, Zakana from Easy Landscape, who may be able to respond to that question.
Okay.
Is Chad in? There we go.
Good evening. The contract says that goes from all the way to Victoria, and I think that's what we've been doing. And I don't recall if it goes any farther to the street that you mentioned.
Okay. I appreciate your answering that. I think I was asking for staff, if we put out an RFP and we did not ask for landscaping from Victoria to Glendora, who will be taking care of that landscaping? Okay. Thank you, sir.
definitely look into that. We can have our existing staff do it, but I'd like to take another look at that and see if that was missed. That's something that we should be able to add to this contract under an amendment, and we can bring that back to the council once we do that discovery.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Does council have any questions? Councilmember Hussey.
This is like a curious question, 'cause I'm looking at on packet page 163 and 164 on the scope of work and, what they have once a month and once a week. And, mowing and weed eating once a week and throughout the Grand Terrace. I'd just like to know, how many staff does he have doing the task? And then how long does it, roughly take to average? Do they do like once a week? Do they do Richard Rawlings and Veterans Freedom Park the same day, or do they do they come here 5 days a week? Or so basically, how many staff do they come 5 days a week, or do they break it down?
We have a crew that 3 and 4 crew members there, and we'll do it 2 days a week. We work over here Thursday and Fridays. Sometimes where it takes 3 days, depends.
And then how long? What's the average time if you do that? Is it the whole day?
The whole day.
Whole day.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Are there any requests to speak on this item? All right. Bring it back to council for consideration of a motion.
I move the recommendation, 1, award a contractor agreement to EZ Sunny Day for landscape maintenance services, and 2, authorize city manager to execute the contract and any necessary amendments for this contract.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, let's vote. Did it work?
Mayor, motion passes. Council members Reynars and Hussey vote yes. Mayor Pro Tem votes yes. And Mayor votes yes.
Thank you. Item 9, modifications to the 2016-17 budget to reduce overall operational costs for the city manager and finance department.
Madam Mayor, it's item 8.
I think that counts as number 3, right? So I'm to leave now?
We'll give you an
All right, number 8.
Foul ball.
Award of March 2017 community benefit funds to Rec Center. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, Cynthia Fortune, Assistant City Manager. This staff report supports 2 goals. Goal number 1, ensuring our fiscal viability, and goal number 4, developing and implementing successful partnerships through productive collaborations with community groups. Before you is a community benefits fund application from the Rec Center. The Rec Center, the Resource Education and Community Center is a nonprofit public benefit organization dedicated to enriching communities by providing recreation, education, and creative arts programs, especially in communities with limited resources. On packet page 197 shows you the number of community benefit fund grants that we've actually provided this fiscal year. We have an annual budget of $25,000. We gave the Terraceview Elementary PTA $671,000. We've granted a $2,000 grant to the Sycamore Mobile Home Park. And for this fiscal year, City Council authorized $5,000 to transfer for the holiday event. So this application is for the Rec Center. They'd like to hold their Easter egg hunt as they did last year, and they're requesting a $310 grant amount that will be used to cover the cost of the special events permit that will require that they take when they do this event. And like I said, they requested this last year. We approved it in the Community Benefit Fund, and they're requesting it again. That concludes my report. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions at this time? All right. Any requests to speak? No takers. Bring it back to council for consideration of a motion.
Yes, I move to approve the award of $310 from the city's Community Benefits Fund to the Rec Center for the 2017 Easter Egg Hunt and Craft Fair.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, please vote.
Madam Mayor, the vote passes. 4 yeses. Councilmember Hussey, Councilmember Reinhardt voted yes. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted yes, and Mayor McNamara voted yes.
Thank you. All right, item 9, modifications to the budget for operational costs for city manager and finance department. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Mayor. Thank you. For the record, G. Harold Duffy, City Manager. As Mayor said, this is the reorganization of the Finance Department and the City Manager's Office. So staff presented a proposal to the council for reorganization of the Finance Department and City Manager's Office on 2/28/17. Council denied staff's request and directed staff to do the following. Return with alternative proposals at the next council meeting, which would include explain the difference between executive assistant and assistant to the city manager, provide a clear and concise report. Should we do this incrementally? The council was concerned that we may be too top-heavy with the finance manager. Look at alternatives to the finance manager. And the titles are similar, and we need org chart to review. It was kind of confusing, the council said. So let's start off with the finance manager versus other finance positions. So this would be just the org chart of what would happen with the finance department. As we currently see, we have the city manager, we have the assistant city manager, and with the finance manager, you would have the duties of the finance department. So the duties of accounting, auditing, purchasing, payroll, fiscal reporting, budgeting, adoption, analysis, monitoring, fund balances, and treasury operations. So with the finance manager will provide the core financial responsibilities. It requires minimal oversight by the ACM. And we'll be able to also handle the processes and also the projects associated with the operations of the department. And so what I've done is kind of show the council, not only would the ACM be responsible for assisting with the finance component, but the ACM was also going to be assigned child care, HR, capital improvements, communications, information technology, Channel 3, website hosting, the senior center. There's actually a contract that we have with Community for Better Housing that we actually haven't really monitored to the level that it should be, and also be in charge of the second floor customer service. So we see the little red lines down here indicate that the finance manager will be working in these particular areas, but the assistant city manager would be also assisting some, but not on the day-to-day level operations because of the level of the finance manager position. If we move this to what we have in here is a budget officer. Part of the council's request was to look at something other than a finance manager. So we went back to our consultant and we looked at the different areas of operations, and we came up with the budget officer. So the budget officer would certainly be able to handle most of the processes for the finance department, but would require the assistant city manager to really go in and work with the projects. So in terms of accounting, auditing, purchasing, payroll, the budget officer can assist and do some oversight of the staff that's there, but really ultimately the department would ultimately be handled or led by the assistant city manager. And then if we had under the Willdan contract, we have a finance director, and that if we had a finance director, that person will report directly to the city manager. And so these functions here under finance and budgeting would not be a part of the assistant city manager's responsibility. They'd be doing the other activities. And as we said, based upon the hire that we have for the assistant city manager, it just makes sense for us not to have a finance director, but to try to have a lower manager position. This is actually the larger organizational chart I wanted the council to see this, although you can't really see it. Down below is the planning director, public works, public safety, the successor agency, executive director, responsible as a city manager, and just parks and recreations. And so while there's activity going on here, there's also the responsibility of the city manager. Now, currently, all of this is the responsibility of the city manager. And so what you have is you have a process that if it's an emergency, you're right on it. But in terms of being proactive to catch the next wave, it's not going to happen under the current process, but it would happen under the reorg with the city manager. The next item that we had was, and I'm sorry if that can't be read by the chart, was the difference between the assistant city manager and the executive assistant. So primarily, I highlighted some activities. So the assistant city manager can lead and coordinate with the various departments. The executive assistant was really someone who is providing administrative assistance and support. So in terms of working with the various departments versus scheduling, making appointments, serve the business community, working with the city manager to facilitate programs versus preparing the council's master calendar and things of that particular nature. So one really is more of, I would call this probably the highest level of an analyst position versus the the executive assistant is more of the highest level of the support services, like a clerk or secretary staff of that particular level. And so here we have the assistant to the city manager under economic development, supporting the city manager with economic development, also acting as the helping support with public information officer and getting the information out. The assistant to the city manager is actually, as I said before, kind of the highest level of the analyst series. Now, there's a little asterisk there in the very front because the assistant to the city manager, the distinguishing difference is the assistant to the city manager is actually an at-will position versus the senior management analyst and the executive assistant are classified positions that if we were to go to a wind down, it's a little more difficult to eliminate the positions versus the assistant city manager and the assistant to the city manager are at-will positions and serve at the pleasure of the city manager. So one of the things that before we start on the numbers, I just want to reiterate, and if I didn't make it clear at the last council meeting, I want to reiterate, what we're talking about now is trying to operate as efficiently as possible. If the council makes no changes and leaves things as they are, we will still be able to function properly. This whole reorg is about trying to maximize and utilize the staff that we have. So the original proposal that we had, every proposal that I will share with you tonight has a principal financial analyst, and that's a part-time position, an office specialist, and an administrative intern. So under the original proposal I presented, the overall cost was $347,640. And that's the difference to our current operating cost of $360,000. And so you'd save about $12,813 over where we are today. The position, this included the finance manager and the assistant to the city manager. The next item would be the budget officer and senior management analyst. The budget officer would be in place of the finance manager from the original proposal, and the senior administrative analyst would be in place of the executive assistant. And that overall cost would be $323,377. The council would save about $37,000 if they would implement that alternative one. Alternative two would be the budget officer and leaving the executive assistant as is. And that would be a total cost of $293,816, saving the city about $66,000 over the current way we operate today. The next proposal is the budget officer and assistant to the city manager. That would be $323,383. And the savings on that would be about $36,615 over where we are today. The fourth and final proposal is $318,000.73. That includes the finance manager and leaves the executive assistant as it is. So what I tried to do was to take the comments of the council and provide you with the various options that you said you would like to see come back before you. And so in each one of those cases, you'll see that there is a dollar savings in that. And so here's sort of a chart that I'm sorry, this chart did not make our agenda packet. And this is basically the summary of all the alternatives next to each other. There is a copy of that chart on the dais, and it kind of shows the difference in terms of the dollar amounts for each one of those items. So, what we're proposing is the results in savings to the general fund if the council chooses any one of those three particular items. Of four particular items. And it's a change in our strategy to capitalize on our strengths of our current staff. And it reduces the city exposure to CalPERS and other challenges in terms of how we're operating versus using internal employees versus using external employees or contracts. So the actions that I'm requesting of the council tonight is to approve all of the position classifications. That would level out the series for the management series by adding the assistant to the city manager, and also level out the budget officer and the finance manager if you approve those classifications. Those classifications you would approve along with the salaries, but they would not be included. Your action would not impact the budget. So that would be one separate action. And the next action that I would want the council to do is to select an alternative to the city manager's recommendation for staffing the finance and city manager's office. So I think I got some really good feedback from the council, and I want to try and bring that back based on the council's direction to come back at the next council meeting and provide that information to the council. So with that, I'm available for any questions.
Okay, questions? Councilmember Hussey, and then Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm kind of disappointed that I'm seeing for the first time a recommendation in this that now says that you're going to hire at the highest level step these employees. And everywhere that I worked, you had to go to the governing body before you hired anybody or placed anybody beyond the C step or the third step. So you're telling me this city doesn't have a policy that oversees your placement of employees at any step in the salary range?
I don't believe that there is a policy that says the city manager can't hire at any level of the position. And for the showing of the information, we're just showing the top step. I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to hire at the top step. There may be a case where you have an employee in another organization that in order to move forward, they may want the top step.
Well, even in Amatrans, I've already been faced with this, where the executive director has come to us and asked for recruiting purposes for authority. So I'm really concerned if we don't have a policy, maybe we need to revisit what kind of policy we have and establish one to put some reining on the city manager position on hiring anywhere in the step. That's just too much authority without having oversight. The other thing that concerns me is using Amatra as an example in my own personal experience as a budget officer. We had a discussion that kind of went sideways. You said you would bring this back during the budget process. And then it ended up being we had 3-2 vote against this proposal. And then at some point, I guess it was to bring this back. And I'm going to say the concerns I have, for example, are if I approve this today, then you're going to come back when we're doing the budget and saying we don't have any money to increase sheriff support, we don't have any money for cost of living for the rank and file employees. See, I'm not. My thinking is good budgeting and transparency would be. This would be part of the budget process, because you said you could work for the next 3 months as you are. This wasn't going to hurt anything for the next 3 months. And then I'm going to, because I don't want to dominate, but the other things that I want to get out on the table, for example, I think citizens better understand Facebook is not public input. If you're discussing this, any city business on Facebook, and you think that we're acting on that, we can't. The Brown Act says that we can only deliberate and have input on any item that's going to be on the agenda or has a likelihood of being on the agenda in this forum. So if people are concerned about anything that you think the city ought to be focusing on with our resources, you're going to have to come here. The second thing is, the reason I want this in the budget process is because we need to engage the community in coming in and understanding what this really is, and I think we as a body really need to understand what the impacts are. I received information from you after the meeting that we would never have the money, even with strident economic development activity, to increase sheriff's services. So what I'm struggling with is I'm not getting the information globally enough with enough time, because if I approve this, then guess what I just did? I don't have any room or flexibility to
So, Mayor,
City Manager?
so if you actually approve this particular item tonight, you would actually be reducing your overall expense from this year's actual budget. And my comments at the last meeting, because I went back to review the tape, and what I said was, if the council would approve all of the other positions, we would have Misfortune fill in the gap on the finance department, and we'd come back with some recommendations on how to handle that for the finance position at the new year. And then at the end, Mayor Pro Tem recommended, and then there was some discussion. You recommended to bring it back. Mayor Pro Tem recommended to bring it back. There was some discussion, and we came back to the end where the mayor said, yes, as Mayor Pro Tem said, bring it back. So the direction that I received was to bring the item back at the next council meeting. That was the direction that I received from the council.
And I'll look at the tape too, but my recollection is I did a motion, we vote, the mayor seconded a motion to approve it, and it failed 3-2. So I never got to articulate really what I wanted. I said first of all, I wanted to continue the item, and I misspoke and said, table, and that was just told you can't table it.
You table it, but generally when you table, it doesn't.
Exactly. So we're saving money, and this is the interesting thing, starting in 19. Well, we're going to save money because the stock market is just really raking it in. and you could change people's retirement pensions and give them shorter years and higher percentages, and it's not going to impact the budget. Then I saw, after the recession, all the department heads coming in with these great budget items on how we were going to save money, because you're going to eliminate some positions, create new positions, or give more positions to other people. And what what you started seeing exactly is the top at-will employees, and I wish I had the time to put some budgets in there. You started seeing the top way up here, almost like the CEOs in corporate entity, and all the lower staff not getting anything. So I'm really concerned from a global perspective what position I'm going to be in. I'm not saving money. Okay? You're getting what you want, saying to me, if you get rid of this contract and do this, you're going to save money. No, that's not saving money. That's just a different option. And what I'm saying is, I'm not, quite sure, and I've lost some sleep over this, and I went really, because I feel like I'm being rushed. And it's difficult because I hired you to do a job, and I want to give you the tools for it, but also I was elected to do a job, and I want to be able to have the tools to do it. You see the dilemma I have? So if I give you these things, we're still going to have way below the 2010 cuts to sheriff services. $66,000 is not even half of $300,000, but if we're going to start adding positions, doing it at the E-step, we're going to have an escalator too, because nobody's going to work just at the E-step forever too. Everybody's going to want a cost of living. So, and I'm just concerned too, because we don't have any newspaper articles informing the public about any of these things. And I think we need to start engaging some of the papers in this community as part of the budget process about, we want to make some really structural changes on how we do things. And that even if we do some really robust economic development things, we're not going to have enough money to pump up sheriff services to what the community desires. I think that's a big conversation that we can't do piecemeal. And I just feel like I'm falling down on the job if I go with this. I'm not comfortable with it. It just feels to me it's not transparent enough, and it's not deliberated enough, and it should be with the budget process.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Alternative opinions or agreement with those stated? Councilmember Hussey.
I really like what Mayor Pro Tem said, and I agree with her. That's what we talked about last time. We need to build up the sheriffs. I would love for us to go back prior to the 2010 level where people were afraid to come up here to Grand Terrace, even to drive through, and stuff, but proactive instead of reactive with our sheriff's department. Mr. Duffy, you did, alternate number 2, because my thing was to get rid of the assistant to the city manager, assistant, whatever. I feel like I'm reading a Cat in the Hat book again when we go through all this stuff. And then have changed the job description or job responsibility for the executive assistant and bring the office specialist. So, but we already have, we don't have executive assistant right now, correct?
Correct.
So if you're looking for one, we still have that position that was budget for that to be filled.
We do, yes.
So that's, you're good on that. Now when Ms. Fortune, and I'm grateful that she got her new position, and very valuable asset to Grand Terrace, and she's, she's top notch on this finance thing, and I like the idea of the budget officer vice the manager, because I believe Ms. Fortune can wear those two hats and work on that. But I'm also with Mayor Pro Tem on, let's wait until we get the budget thing going and, the full realm, what we're going to do. Like the Mayor Pro Tem, losing sleep, talking to, listening on deaf ears, to people, what, our residents want. Just letting them say what they want. I think, you did a good report on here. You did a lot of work. Also, my concern was the step, going to the max on the step. I know we discussed that on things. So now I'm back to, I'm sided with the Mayor Pro Tem on this. I mean, I think, you keep your executive assistant, and then Ms. Fortune's going to have to, work with our finance management. That's how I feel. And then we bring this in our annual budget. You said you could run it without it. We'd save some of this money to help with our sheriffs to bring them in.
Well, I think if we stay where we are right now, Councilmember Hussey, we're not saving from what our original budget is.
Okay. Well, then I'm
I don't-
agreeing with the mayor.
What I don't see in here is where we are today in comparison with these.
In terms of,
On your original recommendation, alternative 1, 2, 3, and 4, I don't see what is it that we have budgeted currently? And what positions are right there right now? So when we talk about finance, who do we have in the finance department to work with our assistant city manager?
so we have a principal financial, a principal accountant. We have 2 support staff from Wildan.
Okay.
And so those 2 support staff will stay on to the end of the year. In a nutshell, what we've done is we've basically taken out the cost for the assistant city manager. That was your original budget item. That was the one thing that you added for the year, in the beginning of the budget year. So hiring the finance director and moving that position over to the ACM and not backfilling that means all you've done is move that position over. So ultimately, in the end, what you started out with at the beginning of the year, that resource is not there. So you basically pull that position out of the budget, and you're exactly where you are today. So just pull the finance, pull the AC.
How much did we have budgeted for the assistant city manager?
I believe it was, with the salary 151, whatever, and 40% on top of that would be, yeah, so it would be 40% of 151 would be $190,000, something like that. 203,000, 200.
Okay, so staying how we are currently right now until the end of the budget year, we're actually saving money over and above what these options are.
Yes and no. Here's the rub on that. The ACM position for economic development was going to hit other funds, not the general fund.
Okay.
And so now what will happen is I will be the one to hit those funds. So we may make up some of it.
Okay.
So I mean it's basically you're pulling that out. So you will ultimately save money, absolutely. But that money's not going to matriculate into being able to use it for all of it for additional police and fires for police services.
Okay. Councilmember Renars?
I appreciate what you brought back. I think you addressed what we had concerns with and what we had talked about. I personally like alternative 2 because it does backfill the promotion. It puts somebody in finance, and if we leave it the way it is right now, we basically don't have anybody over finance except the new position, assistant city manager. So I like alternative 2, and I think there's a significant savings with alternative 2. And I was wondering if some of that savings could go elsewhere for staffing.
Well, what will happen is you will look at, so the numbers that we're talking about now are for the fiscal year. So as the Mayor Pro Tem talked about earlier, when we sit down and look at the budget, we'll have all of those numbers there. We'll have the new number there, and we'll be able to say, here's what we have left over, and where do you want to program that in for the new fiscal year?
Are we fully staffed for the most part in the city, or are we still pretty short?
We have a couple part-time positions that we have an admin clerk that's working for helping code enforcement. We have a weekend code enforcement officer that's basically part-time. But other than that, all of the positions that we have, other than the recent loss of a city clerk, executive assistant, we're fully funded. We're fully hired, all positions.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
The other thing I wanted to mention too was in the last packet, you had like cities and how they were staffed. And, you know, looking at those cities too, I mean, we have a budget under $5 million. And things happen, you know, tax collection happens, sales tax collection happens, your payroll, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things that pretty much are routine.
Sure, absolutely.
And so even liking alternative 2, I think going the budget officer is being very generous, and it's something I could support, but here's the things that I'm going to say. We have a receive and file on child care, and we have unfunded liabilities that hasn't been addressed. I came home and heard screeching and scratching and horrible noise, and it was me talking because this chamber doesn't work well. And we pounded, it just gets to, you know, to the point we pound as a council that we were going to stream this. And, you know, I go on to workshops and they tell you that if the public can't hear, they're going to tune out. So if they tuned us out, they don't know what's happening here. I'm feeling rushed. Maybe and what I don't see here, for example, is, well, we had the last agenda this and the sheriff's thing, and we didn't see anything that said, oh, here's a longitudinal number that what ifs we increase property taxes. We only have X number of homes. So, you know, so if the California Association of Realtors says, you know, homes are going to grow 3%, blah, 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 you know, so my feeling is I need to see more. I need to see some, you know, so I could support alternative 2 because I'd like to see the assistant city manager be able to get out and get busy. But I don't think we need a finance director or manager. And I think an executive assistant, I think that position, that's the duties that person has now, but I think that classification could take on a lot more. I mean, that position is $72,586. Okay, that's salaries and benefits.
And benefits,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, but let's do that, and then I think I need to see more from staff before I can say, yeah, you know, all this, and then even then I'd have to say, you know, a finance manager position for this city this small, I don't think it would ever work. An assistant to the city manager for a city this small, I don't think it's something that, and I didn't see it in other cities. But I think alternative 2 is a fair solution and something I can compromise with.
Do I hear a motion? Oh, all right, I can do that. Are there any requests to speak? Okay, anybody? All right, bring it back to council for the consideration of a motion.
I'll make a motion. Approve new job classification and set salaries for the positions. Whoa, I almost got trapped into that. Budget officer and the existing positions already there. review recommended staffing options for the finance department and the city manager's office, and approve the staffing level alternatives in the staff report for inclusion in the 2016-17 fiscal year budget. And that is alternative 2.
Is there a second to that motion?
I need a clarification on the motion. Am I giving you budget authority for positions that we do not have right now?
I think he only motioned for the new job classification of budget officer.
Okay.
And he said the other ones are already included in the budget.
No,
Yes, that's correct.
there's no requirement for that.
Okay, so the original motion was to approve new job classification for budget officer, and then to approve or alternative 2.
Okay.
Is that
Correct.
Okay.
Mr.
So
City Manager?
the city attorney wants to make sure that we get all the legalese in the motion.
All right, Mr. City Attorney?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that in order to create that position, we must have it in the budget. So there isn't a budget amendment, correct? To put budget officer in the budget.
So we're approving the job classification and set the salaries for the position of budget officer. That's what that first action is. And the next action is to include, so if the council takes that action, what will happen is that position and that classification will be added to the budget.
You have an office specialist in alternative 2 as well.
Yes.
We don't want to forget that one.
So you'll need to include the office specialist.
Should I just read alternative 2?
Yes.
Sounding good.
All right. Mr. Renars, would you like to amend your motion?
Yes, I'd like to augment the motion with alternative 2, which provides a lower level position budget officer to support the ACM, but will require the ACM to stay engaged, act as financial department lead on a regular basis to ensure the overall functions of the department are operating in the most efficient manner. This alternative leaves the executive assistant position within the city manager's budget and adds the office specialist position. The executive assistant will be free to assist the city manager on projects and not hindered with front counter clerical responsibilities. Approximately $293,816.
I'll second that.
Okay. There's a motion and second. Please vote.
Mayor, the motion passes. Councilmember Reynards votes yes. Mayor Pro Tem votes yes. The Mayor Magnabo votes yes, and Councilmember Hussey votes no.
Right. Thank you. And we have manager communications. Mr. City Manager, do you have anything?
I do not, Mayor.
All right. So for the next item, which is closed session, I will be recusing myself for this item since I have a conflict. My husband serves as a board member on the Riverside Highland Water Company, so I will not be taking part in the closed session. Mayor Pro Tem will continue after I pack and leave. Thank you very much for your attention tonight. Thank you, council members, colleagues, for your deliberations, and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Okay, now the council will recess to closed session. In closed session, we have a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to paragraph 4 of subdivision D, section 54956.9, one potential case, Riverside Highland Water Company.
Yes, his father-in-law came home from the
Is he ready? Okay, I'm going to reconvene to open session, the meeting of the Grand Terrace City Council. We had a report, and we gave direction, and we are now adjourned. Thank you very much.